Alright, so the last thing we have to do here is configure the VST connections in Cubase. So go under devices here and click the VST connections, which is also F4 on your keyboard. So if you click that, they both bring up the same window here. Now there's 6 different tabs here. There's your input configuration, your output, your groups and effects. They all kind of end up here. You have external effects, connectivity available, external instruments, and you have this studio tab, which allows you to set up different monitor setups, like different connections, different headphones. You can add cues or talkback mic connections and stuff like that. And this studio tab has a lot to do with the control room part of this. And if you don't know what control room is, I'm not going to explain too much in this video, but I'm going to make a separate video sometime soon about just the control room mixer thing here, because there's tons of things to talk about setup and about what functionality it has, and I could speak a whole video about this thing. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, but essentially it's another way of switching between monitors, being able to switch between stereo monitoring and mono monitoring on the fly, setting your click level, a talk dim switch, a dim switch on your monitoring, all kinds of different things here. So yeah, so let's start with the inputs here. So basically you have all these different buses that you can do. You can set it up in stereo pairs, or you can set it up in mono configuration, or any other combination. So like, what is this? This is left, right, center, something. This is for like surround sound, 5.0, 5.1, that kind of stuff. And there is more. There's all kinds of stuff that you can set up, but in our case, typically we're only using mono and stereo configurations. Right now I have a stereo input setup here. So I'm using inputs 1 and 2 as a stereo bus. Now, whenever I'm in a track, let's go to the piano here. I have a stereo track right here and 2 mono tracks. In my stereo track, I can go here and I can select the stereo input bus, which means I'm getting both the channel 1 and channel 2, which is the left stereo bus and the right stereo bus, as one select source. So now when I'm recording this, I am getting both of those signals recorded down onto this track. Now, if I go to a mono track, I can select within this stereo bus, I can select whether to use the left channel or the right channel, meaning I can use my inputs 1 or input 2. That works totally cool and fine. Now, if you were to do, oops, here we go. If you were to do both of these inputs as mono sources, let's go here to you would be able to select those from a mono track. You can select mono 1 or mono 2, but when you go to a stereo track, you are not able to select both of those tracks as one distinct selected source. So you're not getting a stereo source recorded onto a stereo track. You're only taking input from a mono track. So that's why I set up all of my inputs. In this case, it's only 2 inputs. On my Sapphire Pro 40, I have 8 inputs, and I set them all up in stereo pairs. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that way I always have stereo input availability. For the outputs, it's kind of the same story, where whatever you are setting up, you only have that availability as an output. So right now I have a stereo output. So let's go to a stereo track, and we can select the stereo output as the output. Or you can select only the left or only the right. That's cool. And now if I was to do mono outputs, just like in the inputs, you would only be able to select, if that's all I had, you would only be able to select whether it's going to the output 1 or output 2. It's not going to be a stereo output signal. So in order to have that stereo output, you have to set up a stereo bus and then set up your connections appropriately. So that is also why I have all of my outputs set up in stereo pairs. Now, your group and effects tab here, you are able to add groups and effects and effects tracks under this tab, or you can do it under your project kind of window here, which is kind of more typical. But either way, you're able to do that in this tab here, and you can also select your outputs within this kind of tab thing here. So you can go to your outputs, you can send it to other groups, send it to effects, that kind of stuff. I don't really use this, but it's a good way to get all of them in one window and be able to do these kinds of things. Now, this monitor... Okay, this speakers thing here, this is going to tell you whether it's going to be a mono or a stereo or whatever it is. If it's 5.0 or 5.1 surround, it'll show up here stating what it is. So because I created a mono group track for the kick, it shows up here as a mono group track, because this is a group track named kick, which is being outputted to the drums group right here. Next is the external effects tab here. So in order for you to connect to any kind of external effects, so whether that be EQs or compressors or what have you, some kind of effects processing, you have to set up the device under this external effects tab here. So in my case, I have a Art Pro VLA 2 compressor, and in order to use that as an insert, like you normally do, you have to set up the external effects first. Then you would be selecting the accompanying outputs and inputs for your kind of hardware to send and receive input signal from the device. Then when you're going into here, you would be selecting Steinberg external effects plugins, and then you would be selecting the device. Now it's going to be sent to the device as per what you have selected as your output source and your input source. So if you do not set this up, this device will not show up under the Inserts tab. So keep that in mind. I do have another tutorial on how to set up external effects in Cubase. Check that out if you kind of don't quite understand what I just explained. The other video goes more in depth to what this is, what I'm trying to say. Anyways, external instruments, same kind of thing. It's instead of under this Inserts tab, what this is going to be relevant to is when you're creating instruments, in order for that external instrument to show up in Cubase as an instrument, you have to first set it up here as an external instrument. So you would name it, you would select mono returns and stereo returns, etc., and then associated MIDI device, blah blah blah. I'm not exactly sure how this works, but you set that up, and then when you are trying to use the external instrument within Cubase, it's going to show up under the tab, and you are then going to be able to use it. And lastly is this Studio tab. So they have this thing called the control room. Now this is mostly to do with the control room. This tab here is you are able to set up multiple connections as far as your monitors go, as far as headphone connections, talkback connection, external inputs, and cues. So let's say, for instance, I have two different sets of monitors. I have my main monitors that have also a sub on them. These are good monitors that I want to listen to, but I also want to listen to a crappy set of speakers. I can have a second monitor setup here under different outputs, and then in my control room I can switch between the two monitors on the fly, because let's go here to monitors. Here's the different configurations here. So my main monitors is here, and then my secondary crappy speakers is right here. And I switch between the two on the fly, which is A and B, which is also reflected down here. So now, no matter where you are, that didn't work. I think you have to, you have to have this activated for this to function properly. But yeah, no matter where you are, there's going to be A and B option here, because that's how I've set it up. And for each one of those, you can select whether it's going to be in stereo or in mono, which is really handy as well, because you want to be able to switch between stereo monitoring and mono monitoring if you are kind of more serious about what your end result is going to be like, right? You can also select your click volume level, and you can pan it. There's a dim switch. There is a separate reference level that you can have. There's the metronome can be switched on and off. There's tons of kind of little features here that are super handy, first of all, but because of all the different features, it kind of warrants its own video for me to do and explain it. So yeah, I just wanted to give you guys a little taste of what this control room does. So that is going to be it for this video. Hopefully you figured out how to do all these VST connections and kind of understand more about what each one of these things does, just so you're not confused and whatnot, as I was for so long. Now, how do we delete this? Oh, here we go. Remove. So, yeah, hopefully that helps. Yeah, that seems to be all I was going to talk about. Like I said, I'm going to do another video on the control room, because there's quite a lot to say about that. And yeah, whatever. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video or next video series. So bye bye.